Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans from across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast. A little bit somber as we record this because it's only a little while after the stunning news that Kobe Bryant and his daughter and others, 7 others, were killed in a helicopter crash over the weekend. And, it'll take a while for a lot of people, I think, to kind of like come to grips with that, with the loss of not just a basketball superstar, but a legend, an international legend. And my first guest, we're going to talk about that and a lot of other things. But what a way to start a Sunday. Let's just put it that way. But then past that, we're going to get into some things that maybe could be changed about college football as the college football world evolves from 2019 season to 2020 with my first guest. And then later on, we're going to bring on my cohort, Austin. You know him as Boston Ward. I'm going to start referring to him as, Boston Ward, because that's the way I know him. And the way I know him is the way you should know him, as my boss and the guy who's on top of everything. But with that said, back to my first guest, Joshua Perry, former Ohio State Buckeye, national champion, former NFL player, now basically Big Ten personality on the Big Ten Network, etc. And heck, he may be able to sell you a home one of these days. Who knows? Joshua Perry, welcome back into the program, my man.
I'm always glad to be on with you. Looking forward to a really good show.
Hey, just real quick, I mean, you and I talked about this before the show started. You got to meet Kobe Bryant back when you were with the L.A. Chargers, or now the L.A. Chargers. What's just your thought, when you heard the news on Sunday of what had happened, and just your thoughts of what he meant? I mean, you're part of that generation that grew up in the Kobe Bryant and then evolved into the LeBron James era. But what as far as NBA basketball was concerned, but what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was just kind of wild, and it's almost too hard to express all the things I was thinking about. But you were absolutely right. I was with the LA Chargers, at least in that preseason, and we were based out of Orange County, Costa Mesa, and that's where it kind of really hit home for me, because we did our training camp at Orange Coast College. They just lost their baseball coach in that helicopter crash, and I know a lot of people in that community still that I keep in contact with, and so I know they're really hurting. But Kobe Bryant was probably like the first transcendent worldwide figure that I really knew as an athlete. And I remember when I first started playing travel basketball, I wore the Crazy 8 shoe. And it used to be called the KB8, Kobe Bryant shoe, when he was with Adidas. And then he transitioned over to Nike, but they kept producing the shoe. They called it the Crazy 8. And it was just like a point of pride. It had 8 on it. I wore number 8. First year I played AAU basketball. And had just the opportunity to spend some time with Kobe out at training camp one day. And it was just awesome listening to him. But just really thinking about that loss there, it shows you how fate, and specifically death, doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, young or old, rich or poor, black or white. None of that really matters. And specifically with Kobe, you think of a guy who is, internationally famous and one of the best to ever play basketball and has all the money you could want in the world, to tragically pass away at 41 years old with his 13-year-old daughter with him. I couldn't imagine being in a member of his family or being a close friend of his. And so it's a very somber time for a lot of us, especially as sports fans, as somebody who grew up watching him, but also with regards to what it must be like for the families that were involved, because now they're picking up pieces and they'll probably never be the same. Such a tragedy on a huge level. And hopefully, out of this tragedy, it brings perspective to people to truly care about their family members and to not hold grudges, and to squeeze people a little bit tighter next time you give them a hug.
Yeah, and to make the most of every moment of every day. I mean, that's nothing's ever guaranteed, as the old saying goes. Nothing's ever promised. And, also, it just shows you, man, don't take for granted, your ride to work, the ride to the grocery store, the ride home. I mean,
Yeah.
It's really stunning how you get these reminders sometimes. But just him in particular, he kind of gained some fame as in the last several years of being an inspirational speaker. I mean, an inspiration to athletes. If I remember correctly, him talking to the Alabama football team on a, like in preseason from one of those behind the scenes kind of shows on ESPN a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year. And then, like you said, when you met him and got to speak to him a little bit, or just heard him talk, what just resonated with you more than anything else, Joshua?
Yeah, and he's just an impressive person. I think the reason why he's so inspirational is everything he talks about is about the things you can control, and that's your mentality, and that's the repetitions that you put in. And, a lot of these folks, they end up becoming transcendent because of talent. And that's not to say that Kobe wasn't supremely talented, but he was just mentally built differently than a lot of people. But that's a mentality that he felt like he could teach and he felt like he could inspire people with. And truly, from listening to him speak, his words do resonate. And they continue to resonate. You see the videos floating around social media right now, a lot of the quotes that he had. And for years to come, there will be young athletes who may have never seen him play live that will be inspired by some of the words that he's lent to us. So just to be that type of figure, I think that's why all of this is so impactful.
Yeah, and he was no perfect man, that's for sure. And we all know what happened in 2003 and the jeopardy he faced there. And, your heart still kind of goes out to the young lady that was involved in that kind of situation. But even his family, he almost lost his family in that deal, but was able to mend the fence, so to speak, and move on. But you're an athlete. You put your heart and soul into becoming a big time college football player, but you didn't lose sight of the other things in life, which is what always impressed me about you, Joshua. You're one of those guys who I said was curious about a lot of things, not just about how you could get 4 to 6 A to B a little quicker. And but he turned out to be that kind of guy too, right? Yeah, and yet people don't understand. You watch Tiger Woods hit the golf ball back in his prime, and even now, he's back, to a certain extent. But when Kobe, most the average person doesn't understand the work that went on to get to that point. You know what I mean? Behind the scenes, on the practice range, on the practice court and stuff. This is when I think if people are really smart in our profession, they're pointing out that this guy was self-made. He didn't just come out of the womb a big time basketball player.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to absolutely examine that. It goes right back to that mentality we were talking about, but absolutely just the work that he was able to put in the practice and the dedication truly, but also in speaking to Kobe as, everything outside of the athlete that he was. I think a lot of people fail to realize that he was trilingual. He's a very cultured, worldly guy. He was involved in a lot of philanthropy. Like his impact is beyond what he did as an athlete, it's beyond sports. It's truly a guy, like you said, not a perfect man by any means, but somebody who absolutely wanted to be impactful and use his influence as something that would be a positive catalyst in the community.
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who poo-poos sometimes athletes in their philanthropic pursuits, thinking, basically claiming that a lot of that's just to promote themselves. And I go, who cares what your motivation is one way or the other, as long as you're making life better for somebody else. You follow my drift? And that's, and I think Kobe was genuine in that regard. I think he understood, that everybody isn't equal. Some people need a little boost in life, etc. And then, everybody's not going to be like Kobe. Everybody's not going to be as dedicated. Everybody's not going to be as talented, but you find your niche. And that's what I think he impressed on people more than anything else, was find that thing that you can do well and do it.
For sure. And, just even as he transitioned out, you might have thought it would be a tough transition for a guy like Kobe, but he even started to invest himself with that same competitive nature into his family and into his daughter's basketball career, and just into a bunch of different things. So there's so much that reflectively we can take away from what Kobe Bryant meant to sports, but there's also so much reflectively that we can take away just on how to overcome the adversity that we face, whether it's in our careers, whether it's with our families, how to put the work in to become the best, and how to be an example for other people first and foremost.
Well, let's segue away from that because, you watch the let's get into Ohio State football and just college football in general. You watched the Ohio State Clemson game in the Fiesta Bowl. Do we know what a catch is anymore, Josh? Well, I'll just start with that question.
No.
No. You're paid to give your opinions on college football and calls, etc. I'm not trying to get you in any trouble here, but
it is what it is.
Are you? I don't know. What do you take away? What do you take away from? Let's just start with that play in particular, and then we'll talk about targeting, etc. But what do you just take away from the way that call came down? Is Boston? You know him as Austin Ward pointed out. That call might have come actually from Birmingham, Alabama. From a big center there that was watching the game along with the official in the press box and then the officials on the field. But what do you take away from that catch, strip, scoop, and score that was ruled not to be?
Bias, whatever you want to call it, but when you slow it down, it was like 4 steps in there, so I don't understand how that wasn't a completion with control of the ball. And that was the inconsistency with me. It's 2 things: is what constitutes a football move and what constitutes control. Because part of it said that he didn't fully control the catch, and I would argue that Jeffrey Okudah was trying to knock the ball out of his hand the whole time that he was trying to complete the catch, and it looked to me like it was complete enough that he could take the ball away, so Okudah couldn't hit it within 4 steps. And then as he was trying to pull it back in, it got knocked out. So I don't know if you need to cradle the ball for that to be considered control. I don't know if the football move involves something other than taking a number of – I don't know. And that's the overarching thing here, because we're going to talk about the other call too. That was controversial, but I don't know what the rules committee looks like. I know there are former coaches on there. I don't know how many former players are on that committee. I don't know who has the license to actually write the text of the rules, but there are too many inconsistencies, and that's par for the course with officiating. That's why it's officiating. People call it differently, but there are too many inconsistencies, and I don't think that the rules define clearly enough what constitutes probably the most important parts of the rule so it can be executed properly.
If that play had been in the end zone, as my buddy Boston Ward said, and Spencer Holbrook,
it's a touchdown.
It's a touchdown because, he would have, if it had been at the sideline and he catches the ball, it would have been a first down. You understand what I'm saying? I think somebody made up a rule there. I think somebody just made it up on the fly and then interjected themselves into the most important game of the season to that point for 2 teams. That's what all I believe. Somebody wanted to be officious, and until I'm proven otherwise, and I'm not going to be proven otherwise, because I always taught my little kids to catch football like Chris Carter, which Chris Carter. Right. You catch the ball with your fingertips out in front of you. You don't cradle it, and let the ball get into your pads, etc. And that's exactly what that kid did. He caught the ball out there and took 3 steps. And I don't know what you say to people except they were robbed. And what bothers me is how long, if you were on that Ohio State football team, that, for example, that play for Jeffrey Okudah and Jordan Fuller, that play will stick with them forever, won't it? How could it not?
Sure. I think about 2015, we played Michigan State. I think about plays in that game that I missed.
Yeah.
In such a narrow game like that. I haven't played ball, played for Ohio State in 5 years now, whatever it is. Like, that stuff truly haunts you as a player. And what you said about interjecting yourself in the game, that resonates with me too. Because as an official, you have to call the game by the rules. I think that you have some leeway in judgment for what you call and what you don't call, what you let go and what you don't.
Yeah.
But in a game of that magnitude, especially, making a game-changing call that is a judgment call or a questionable call on an overturn, to me, is egregious. I feel like in those moments where it's 50-50 or it's questionable, to overturn it is something you should never do. Because you can always get away with saying, well, we made the judgment call on the field and we didn't think there was enough evidence. But for them to try to justify the fact that all the evidence existed for them to correct what they did on the field just blows my mind.
Yeah. And like you said, the officials on the field did not make that call. As far as the targeting goes, here's what I understand. Shaun Wade did duck his head a little. I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence also ducked into him because coming in from Trevor Lawrence's right was Chase Young, about to get his first sack in 3 games. And that call also, there was no call on the field there. That call came from on high. What should young people, who are playing the game now? They're trying to take the helmet out of the game of football. I mean, hitting with the helmet first, and that's what I've tried to explain to people. That's not just to protect the quarterback. That's to protect the guy who's lowering his helmet and hitting a guy first with his helmet. But there's a difference between sort of lowering your helmet to protect yourself and continue the play, and lowering your helmet and launching into a guy. And Shaun Wade did not launch into him, but he did lower his helmet. So what do we take from a confusing standpoint to clear it up for people? Like I said, you do this on the Big Ten Network. You're supposed to explain things to people. What do we take from that play?
Yeah, well, first off, I think the way the rule is written is absolutely stupid, and I'll dive into that in a minute. But I think first, we need to – a lot of folks never played football at a high level, and so I don't think you understand, not you, but some viewers don't understand what it takes to be able to make those plays in real time.
Yeah.
And as we've been taught lately about avoiding the head and neck area and avoiding those high hits is to lower our profile. In real time, the fastest and easiest way to lower your profile involves ducking your head to a certain degree.
Yes.
Whether that's the safest way, and I know coaches don't coach that, so it's not being coached, but that is a natural, instinctual way to try to make the correct hit, and it ends up being the wrong hit. So I think we have to consider physics and proprioception and kinesiology when we consider the way that we write these rules. But the way I understand it is that it doesn't matter where the contact comes. If you initiate contact with the crown of your helmet,
right,
that is considered targeting, and that's an ejection. And I think that is the most disingenuous thing ever, because that only affects typically defensive players. And a lot of times those hits can happen without being malicious hits with intent. So I think we can do 2 things. Is we can change the text of the rule, because in that case, every running back that's trying to run through a tackle that lowers their shoulder also lowers their head. And a lot of times contact is initiated with the crown of their helmet. At the line of scrimmage, offensive linemen will fire off the ball, field goal unit, whatever it is. They'll initiate contact with the crown of their helmet. You can look through, there are a million examples every game. There would be like 10 kids getting tossed out. So we can change that. Or we can judge the intent. If the hit is not egregious enough and is not dynamic enough and is not violent enough to call in real time on the field, there's no way we should be able to buzz down, take a look at it, and then eject a kid. You might be able to buzz down and set the penalty, and I wouldn't love that, but that's okay, because you're trying to correct the behavior. That's why you don't toss people out for horse collars. That's why you don't toss people out for pass interference or face mask. But you assess them a penalty because you're trying to eliminate that behavior, correct it. Maybe not even eliminate, but correct it.
Yeah.
But the big hits, the violent hits that we know we're trying to eliminate, I'm fine with the ejections on those. But we can use common sense here. I feel like we're so behind in football in a lot of ways when it comes to using common sense.
Hey, what do you know? Talk to Shaun Wade a little bit. I mean, Lettermen Row, broke the story about him opting to come back, for his next year at Ohio State. But what do you think was going on? What do you think's going on in his mind even today? Is he confused about why he didn't get to play the rest of the college football playoff semifinal? I mean, what do you think there?
I don't think there's any type of confusion. I think there's just probably disappointment, just from the fact that he knows that what he did by the letter of the law probably wasn't a legal hit, but at the same time, he knows that his intention wasn't to spear anybody or hurt anybody.
Yeah. And
he knows that the outcome of the play did not knock the opposing player around. That's the other thing I want to talk about too, is if they have the ability to buzz down and call somebody for targeting and eject them, they should make the offensive player that was on the other end of that hit go through the full evaluation for a concussion.
Yeah.
Because if we're trying to make the game safer, then we should evaluate whether the offensive player was truly hurt or if we're just tossing people out, tossing out.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because T. Higgins, their wide receiver, left the game with a towel over his head, walked to the locker room after a big hit in the I think it was the first quarter. He played the whole second half. so
Sure.
so they got, you know, and he didn't look like a guy who'd be coming back in, but he made a miraculous recovery in the locker room. But I digress. I mean, you know, it's crazy. Real quick before you go, where do you put this 2019 Ohio State team? I had Matt Finkus on last week. You know, he was on the 2006 team that was replete with stars, et cetera, lost one game and then won the Rose Bowl. And, you know, it's like if you don't win that national championship, like you were on the 2015 team, that 15 team was damn good. You follow my drift? So where does this one – but the 2014 team is the one that's going to have the big reunions, you know, 30 years from now. I mean, 30 years hence, and et cetera, and is going to, you know, get all the accolades and stuff. So where does this 2019 team fit, do you think, in the is there a special category for the 2019, 2015, 1969, you know what I mean, those teams that fell just short?
Yeah, and I think, you know, 69 is hard for me to evaluate because, you know, I was born in 94, but some of these teams that I've been a part of and some of these teams that I've had a chance to watch would go down as some of the best assembled teams that never won a championship. And not just Ohio State teams, but probably in college football. Like this, you look at some of the computer rankings for this Ohio State team, and it may very well be one of the best college football teams that didn't win a national title.
Yeah.
And it just the talent level, but also the way that they were dominant through the majority of their games this year. I mean, you know, a lot of these games weren't close, and most of them didn't have to be close. And so I would give this team, personally, the one that we just watched, 2019, the edge over the 2015 team that I was on, just because I feel like in 2015 we were really good and we were supremely talented. I think there was more talent on that team, but we played around a little bit too much. We never gelled the way that we were supposed to, you know, until it was too late, and then we go out and we wax Michigan, and then we go out and we wax Notre Dame, but that was too little too late.
Yeah.
It was just really impressive watching this year, and I knew this team was destined for something special. I think that you know, they had their chances and their opportunities, and this is probably the making for something really unique in the future to come, just because these guys are going to be so hungry and ready to play ball.
All right, last two things. What impressed you about Ryan Day and his staff, but especially Ryan Day, getting handed the reins to one of the great programs in college football, the way he handled it? What impressed you? I mean, getting handed the reins, you know, full time. Obviously, he did it for 3 games in 2018. What impressed you about the way he did things? And then, what do you see the seeds of another great run next year or this coming season?
First off, what impressed me about Ryan Day is the demeanor that he took. I think he understood his team really well and was able to motivate those guys the way that they needed to be. I thought that he handled the media really well, and he's very likable and answers, you know, all the questions and does that the right way.
Yeah.
And, you know, closed out recruiting really well too. So just everything it takes to be an elite coach, he stepped in right away and did. And he did it with a young quarterback and some guys that he had never been around before in terms of coaches. And I think one of the hardest things is building a rapport and building chemistry, and they did that all on the fly. I have a ton of appreciation for that just because I know the process it takes to be able to get to an elite level, and they did it seemingly overnight. What was the follow-up question?
Is this team built to make another run, do you think, in 2020? I mean, what's your sense of what's coming back from what you know of what's coming back, you know, from the core of the offensive line is coming back. Justin Fields is back. They've got some receivers that are rising. Defensively, they're losing maybe the best player in college football in Chase Young and three-quarters of the secondary. But is there a sense from what you've seen of the players in the program that they could make another run this year?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing about making a run this year is the quarterback is back. And a lot of teams in college football have to replace quarterbacks. I think it's one of the toughest things to do is getting the quarterback up to speed. And Justin Fields was up to speed almost immediately as a new quarterback in the program last year. This year he's going to be, even more comfortable, and the offense is probably going to evolve just because he's going to be able to do more things with another offseason with Ryan Day. I'm not worried about the running back situation. Everybody keeps talking about, is Master Teague the guy and recruiting this and recruiting that. I think Tony Alford does a great job of developing running backs, and I think Master Teague took all the steps we wanted to see him take to become the number 2 running back who was 6th in the Big Ten in rushing this year. So there's nothing in my mind that would tell me that he wouldn't take that next step.
Yeah.
Offensive line is going to be good, like you said. The wide receivers I'm looking forward to. And then defensively, even though they're young players, those guys played so many reps because games were out of hand. So it's not like these guys are totally green. And they played against Big Ten talent, which is something that you want. But having Kerry Combs back, I think, is undervalued in the aspect that every player Kerry Combs developed turned into an elite player.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's recruiting, but part of it is he's a coach that can get the best out of guys because they trust him. He's honest, and he is a technique kind of guy. It's what he does best is coach technique. So there's no reason for me to believe that this team won't be elite again. Now it's just going to come down to finishing when they need to finish.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Joshua Perry. He never has an opinion on everything. It's like going to the dentist when I'm working on his teeth there, just trying to get something out of him. No, Joshua, you know me, man. I've always appreciated you, my man. And once again, and I like having you on. I like having you on my podcast, but more than anything else, I like just shooting the bull with you, my man. But I appreciate it once again,
No doubt.
especially for your thoughts on Kobe. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes,
Joshua
absolutely.
Perry. All right, man. We'll see you
Thank
later.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Joshua Perry, one of my favorite people I've ever covered at Ohio State, and you know why. And if you watch him on the Big Ten Network, he got better and better as the season went on. Then he gives great insight, both from a player standpoint and from a curiosity standpoint. He's not just sitting there like a rhubarb growing in somebody's garden somewhere. He's keeping up with stuff, and always appreciate having him on. And when we get back for our next segment, of course, what a lot of people think is the most anticipated segment of the podcast each week. I'm going to have Boston, you know him as Austin Ward, on, but we'll be back right after this. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, with, like I promised, Boston. You know him as Austin Ward. Always give him a handshake.
Good to see you.
We were just shooting the bull in our warm-up session here in the green room.
After that incredible intro that I got,
Yeah.
I was so excited to come on.
I tell you, it's interesting. I had, as you know, I had Joshua Perry on before you, and
Yep.
he actually met Kobe Bryant, spoke with Kobe Bryant, a couple of years ago and stuff, and just that stunning news, man. And you're like me, you've covered sports, but you're also a little bit of a fan of the game, etc., a fan of the greats. Let's put it that way too. And
Yeah.
what was your first reaction when you heard the news over the weekend?
I couldn't really believe it. I was shocked. I always rooted against Kobe.
Yeah, but that's okay too.
Yeah, but as you say, you recognize the greatness. For me, it wasn't so much like, I didn't think he didn't have the impact on me, like my professional life or, somebody that I rooted for and was really invested in. But
Yeah.
I think what yesterday, as the coverage played out and the shock, for everybody around the country or the world, really. I mean, you think about some of the impact he had expanding the game overseas, the NBA and Nike and the power that they have around the globe. But I was thinking just about the people that you and I cover at Ohio State, whether that's the football team or you saw Ryan Day and some of the coaching staff, talking about the Mamba mentality, and obviously the basketball team is going to be impacted by that. These guys all got into it since they were born, watching Kobe. And trying to model their game after him, and watching everything that transpired. So yesterday for me, it wasn't quite something that I didn't have that pit in my stomach, but I know
You were stunned, though.
I was absolutely stunned by
Yeah.
the news. And then when you have a major event like that, I'm following the way the coverage plays out. And
Right.
I'm trying to, step back a little bit from it. But yesterday was a tremendous reminder about just how influential he was with the young people that we cover on a day-to-day basis. And
Right.
so I didn't want to, weigh in on it. I had nothing to really add to the conversation, and I think if you don't, in situations like that, it's best to just sit there and maybe think and let people handle it in their own way. And you saw that with the Ohio State football team and trying to process it on social media and hoping that it wasn't true, and then
Right.
talking about whether they were Lakers fans or if they grew up wanting to wear this number or this, that, and the other. And I thought that was a really sobering reminder, is that a lot of these guys lost someone that had been their hero for their entire life, and
they had his jersey, etc.
Yeah, and that's the legend part. I hate to dip into the cliche, but I mean, this guy's not ever going to be forgotten, and it is always sad when it happens to somebody who has so much more that he clearly wanted to give. He had entered this. You touched on this with Josh, that he had some things that people didn't like about him, and he had some questionable incidents that happened in his past, but he had really successfully moved past that. Wasn't ever charged or convicted of a crime, but the stuff he was doing to give back, and obviously what he was doing with his family had really made
that's what impressed
a mark
me
on people.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I mean, Will Crawl, the guy that owns our he's the guy who ought to
the real boss man.
He's the guy who ought to call Boston, but that wouldn't fit. Boston Crawl doesn't make any sense, right? He and I are both aviation nuts, so I mean, everybody knows. I mean, anybody knows me knows I flew airplanes when I was a youngster, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. I don't know why anybody would give me the control, but what I go to is rich people get to travel in different ways than us average folks. They get to beat the LA traffic by flying in a helicopter, which he did hundreds, maybe thousands of times,
right,
just to beat the LA traffic to get to the Staples Center, etc. But I've flown in helicopters quite a few times in my life, and I'll never forget, I got on one time, and I was flying up to Mid-Ohio. The guy that owned Mid-Ohio then, Jim Truman, he leased a helicopter, and I just flew with his pilot up to Mid-Ohio one time. It took like 30 minutes, 25 minutes. But I remember getting on there and the thing's warming up, and he goes, you know what a helicopter is, don't you? I said, no. He goes, it's a million pieces all trying to fly apart at the same time because it's whirly-girly and all this stuff. And I've never really liked helicopters. I got to fly nap of the earth one time with the what's basically right above the trees with the general of the Ohio National Guard, Bob Teeter. They were on the Ohio National Guard was on exercises up in Grayling, Michigan, and we're flying right above the trees and stuff. When you're a young guy, because I was doing a story about it for their news site back in the late 70s at the Dispatch, and when you're a young guy, you never even think about the jeopardy, the hazard, or whatever. You're just, wow, man, this is cool. Can we get closer to the trees, etc.? And so I'm like anybody else. I'm as curious about what happened with this helicopter as I am anything else there, because but to lose 9 people like that, and several of them young youngsters, including Kobe Bryant's daughter, and I guess the daughter of another acquaintance there on that team, on the Mamba team. It just floors me, because I know exactly that area. I drove up to the Mamba. I told you about that. After the Ohio State Rose Bowl game, the next day I drove up to the Mamba thing and took a picture of the entrance, and I sent the picture to Dwayne Haskins Jr. and said, they're waiting for you to get here, man. They're wondering when you're going to get here.
And he came out?
Yeah. And he hadn't announced at that point, but we all knew what was up, and he ended up training there and a little bit. But just the impact, though, Kobe Bryant had. I mean, you're right, he was that guy kind of afar that was just this great player who you kind of sometimes didn't like. I mean, just because he was sort of the antagonist, in a play, so to speak, and because he was always going against maybe a team that you liked better, and there was not an aloofness about him, but there was he was on another level as far as like the guy that was just maybe thought he was better than he was sometimes, and maybe took games over sometimes when maybe the team would have benefited a little bit more by passing the ball. But that's what I think of when I think of him. But then I think of him later on, and when you look back at his scoring record, heck yeah, I want that guy taking my shot, right?
Somebody that's willing to do it.
Yeah.
And I think, but some of this, and I talked about this a little bit with Chives, Spencer Holbrook, yesterday and this morning. It's like a lot of what he did wound up transcending on the court, and I don't just mean off the court stuff. I think, was it 3 years ago that he retired, and the last time that he came to Cleveland, Allie's like, well, that's going to be his last time through. She's never seen Kobe play. I'd been to one before, but she's like, let's go. And I'm like, okay. It was the night before. Tickets were really expensive. It was Kobe and LeBron the last time in Cleveland.
Yeah.
You're just way up high in the nosebleeds, but he didn't have a great game because until that last 60-point performance or whatever it was in his last game for the Lakers, it was kind of he playing out the string a little bit.
And he knew it.
But you could still see, you saw the flashes of greatness, and but even people who don't follow the NBA on a day-to-day basis, like my wife, wanted to see what this guy was all about in person, and had that one opportunity, and it was like, it's still really cool that we got to make that. But that's just for us. But you're talking about Dwayne Haskins and Joshua Perry. It feels like he was so willing to go everywhere to start mentoring people at the end of his career when it wound down.
Yes.
Now you're finding like everybody has these stories of just getting to meet Kobe, and that's the one that they want to tell. Like, we watched him play, but like Dwayne Haskins got, to go have one conversation with him, or, we could go on and on with Ohio State players that have got to train, or he visited and gave a speech, or just, Urban Meyer at one point had a Kobe Bryant saying up on the wall about, laziness and how those people can't relate. His impact was really everywhere because he had a unique way of thinking and working and playing.
Yeah. I agree. And, and his impact, like you said, you either get it or you don't, meaning the hard work involved, et cetera. And the guys, because like I said, most people go to an Ohio State football game or an NBA game or whatever, and they just think these guys are like me and you. They're sitting around all day and then they go out and play. No, that's not the dedication it takes, et cetera, to become an elite level player. But then on top of that, to have something extra, which is what he has, which is what Tiger has, which is what LeBron has. Those become the legends. It was interesting because I watched the end of the Farmers Insurance tournament yesterday, and I was sitting there like everybody else. I'm going, I don't think Tiger knows about this yet. No one's told him.
Yeah.
And then I watched Joe LaCava because of the camera. I give it up to the camera guy there. He got right up behind him, and when Tiger turns to him and says, "Excuse me," wow, it was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because obviously those were two guys from the same feather.
Oh, I mean,
in their dedication, they got to be friends. Obviously Tiger grew up what do you call LA Lakers fan, et cetera, and had those great pictures of him and Kobe back when they were really young and stuff. But yeah, it stunned everybody once you heard it.
And that's that's that Mamba mentality thing, is surrounding yourself with the like-minded people that drive. And Tiger has always done that individually. I mean, you could call it the Tiger mentality or the Mamba mentality or whatever. Those guys. I remember when Roger Federer was stacking up the majors, and you'd hear the stories about Tiger and them going back and forth, like, oh, that's 15, that's 16 for you. Like, those people are driven and want to be around other people who have that same intensity.
Because like I said, all these other people don't understand it. They don't understand what you are about. It's kind of like divorcing yourself, like Urban Meyer, said, divorce yourself from people who give you negativity all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, embrace the ones who understand what you're all about, and embrace and they understand what you're going through. Yep. And they, it's, you surround yourself with like people, and you become better and better and better. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Only a few of those guys understand each other.
And every era has their special players, their impactful people. I'm not trying to pretend like this, Federer, Tiger, Kobe, I hate to throw in Sidney Crosby because I despise the Penguins. But these people, I mean, there is a really special group of athletes right now, and I know that maybe that's just my generation, but these are the people that, I've followed their whole career, and I haven't had, a bunch of those that I remember every part about it.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was when I was growing up, but his career started the year that I was born, so it's not like I remember him at North Carolina. That happened beforehand. But
that's funny. I covered a game he was in as a freshman
Yeah,
when they played Kentucky at the Meadowlands back in December of that year.
But these have been some transcendent careers that everyone will remember, and they hit a little. They do hit a little bit different when they are the people that, Allie was saying yesterday, and she's reading it and hoping that the reports were wrong, and that's a whole other conversation on the journalism side.
Oh yeah,
about the kids. But she's like, Kobe was 41. Like, how can that be? Like, he's that close to our age. And I'm like, well, I mean, hey, you don't go to college, it speeds up your career.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But, that's like, and as you said with Joshua Perry, you don't need to rehash it. Like, sometimes you get these reminders that no one's immune,
Oh, yeah.
We're all going to meet it at some point, and you better make the most of every opportunity you get. And certainly Kobe did that. He and people talked about how he had this plan for the next 35 years, 41 years being more impactful than the first, and that's the tragic part of it. But it's also a reminder to all of us.
Yeah, and also the helicopter is a great example of not only maximizing the most you can out of a day, but convenience factor. That's what you achieve as you become more and more successful in life. And
when you talked about driving to the grocery store and getting back, that was the way he did that. It's not like it was a one-off opportunity in a helicopter. So, he had done it thousands of times, I'm sure, and just assumed you're going to get there safe. But nobody ever knows. You can't take it for granted.
Well, let's lift this show back up to talk about college football. I want to bring this up, because an acquaintance of mine, he's been a long time guy that's covered college football and does a great job for the Austin American Statesman. Mm-hmm. Kirk Bowles came out with his way too early. I think it is way too early. Top 25 or whatever on over the weekend, and his number one was Penn State. Now, why are you laughing?
What possible reason could you have to put? Well,
let me just give you his top. Let me look up his. You go ahead and fill in the blanks here while I look up his top.
All right, let me sum up my argument against Penn State at number one.
Okay.
A, James Franklin. Just for our longtime listeners, they know I'm going to start right there. Maybe I should put that's 1A, and 1B is Ohio State still exists in the Big Ten. I just don't. I'm at a loss for what part of Penn State's roster and their coaching staff and the transition.
Well, he likes Micah Parsons, and he likes some other things about their offensive team. And has
he watched them?
I don't think he quite checked out the Ohio State depth chart. And the 4 and 5 A's that are going to be coming on, 4 and 5 stars that are going to be, some of them from his great state of Texas. But I'm not making fun of the guy. Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering. I
thought it was going to be Alabama and Clemson for the national championship this past year.
Well, Kirk has done this for a long time, and we can pick any number of predictions that go wrong. I've made a bunch of them. I used to have to do these way too early Big Ten power rankings back when I was at ESPN. I know how it goes and how something in January can look a lot different even than your preseason poll in August. Stuff changes. For this one in particular, to me, it makes no sense why you would pick Penn State. To me, they're going to be the same.
Well, as he said, to be a little different. To be for something.
And we've said that before. Different. Like last summer when people, you get tired of putting Ohio State and Clemson. If you're just doing the Big Ten, which is what I made fun of last July, people picked Michigan to win and made them the preseason favorite.
You know what I got tired of? I was on a million radio shows and stuff then, and talking with people, and I got tired of it, what's the word I'm looking for there, of dissing that pick of Michigan winning the Big Ten, not just the Big Ten East, the Big Ten.
Yeah,
because I got that question all the time, and I would give them part and parcel of why I thought Ohio State
it's irritating
should be your favorite,
because this poll comes out and our colleagues voted on it and they had their opinions and they all get to do that. But it became entrenched that Michigan had this momentum behind them, and they were the preseason favorites, and Ohio State was an underdog. I'm like, are you kidding me? The 2-time defending champs with all
and this 5-star guy transferring in at quarterback. Well, he's going to be a brand. And you got Ryan Day as a new head coach. I go, but see, that's kind of like why when I picked Buster Douglas to beat Mike Tyson, I had inside knowledge. I mean, I understood that this was the greatest Buster Douglas had ever been in his life, getting ready for a fight, and I understood. From being around Mike Tyson, he was 5'10" on a good day, and if you could stay away from the uppercut, a good boxer had a shot at him. And then Buster Douglas gave everybody the blueprint to how to beat Mike Tyson, and a few guys after that obviously beat him too. But it's because you and I, and a lot of several others around Ohio State, we understood what Ohio State had coming back. We understood the scuttlebutt
Tim,
that was going on,
when you picked
that this
Buster
offensive
Douglas,
line was going to be better than the year before. You understand? Things like that.
When you picked Buster Douglas, that was a what? 20-1 shot?
42-1.
Okay, so you didn't have, the majority of people who covered that fight saying, I like that underdog. Ohio State is Mike Tyson right now.
True. Yeah.
And so you had however many people voted last year. I don't know. I didn't get one. I don't know if you voted in that one or not, but
I can't remember if I did or not.
But you just had this feeling. Michigan was the same team that they were before, probably less effective on defense.
Yeah.
They had the same quarterback. They had the same coach who's shown the same weaknesses, and people were all of a sudden saying, now it's going to be different.
Yeah.
But guess what? It wasn't. And I think
you know why? Because they wanted it to be different.
But
because people get tired of the same old.
And now I think this is the start of this. Is maybe this is why you brought it up. This could be the start of people have realized it's not going to happen for Michigan. It's not going to happen for Jim Harbaugh, and they have a ton of questions coming in this offseason. So somebody else in the Big Ten has to fill that hype void.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be James Franklin. Now it's going to be Micah Parsons. Can he win the Heisman on the defensive side of the ball? That's what's going to happen for the next 8 months.
Yeah.
And I have a spoiler for you. It's not going to happen. Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten.
Well, anyway, Kirk Bowles, his way too early top 10, as he said, were Penn State, then Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, USC, Georgia, and Oregon. USC was just hired. Texas just fired defensive coordinator Todd Orlando.
USC.
Yeah. Notre Dame. I got to see Notre Dame play live this past year on one of the off weeks when they played Virginia Tech. I think Notre Dame's got some nice talent, but they're not on the level of Ohio State. I don't think they're not on the level of Clemson.
Well, if anybody's looked at Clemson's schedule next year,
yeah.
There's only one date you need to circle.
Yeah, Georgia. I'm not sure about Georgia going into next year. They've lost quite a few guys in the transfer portal, et cetera. They've stockpiled some talent, et cetera. Oregon. I like Oregon. I mean, that's going to be a great showdown game. Second, third game of the year, Ohio State goes to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Be Ohio State's second trip ever out there. It's going to be interesting because that's going to set the tone. Two defending conference champions playing each other, and I think the winner emerges as one of the favorites for one of the 4 spots in the college football playoff rankings. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the Penn State. There's not enough. I don't know. Penn State didn't show me enough this past year for me to go that far with saying they can upset the Ohio State apple cart. Except the big factor is they are going to be talented, and they do host Ohio State.
Yeah. What if? I mean, this is getting way into the weeds for that particular matchup. That's 10 months away. But if that's a weekend that Fox has the broadcast rights, that's always the time that they're trying to schedule the whiteout. Get it at night.
Yes.
And playing there in Happy Valley is not the same at noon. I've had this conversation with Berm a ton of times. Why can't the Horseshoe have the same environment?
Well, that's what's going to be interesting is will they get to have the whiteout?
Yeah. And I don't think they will. If Fox has the game and they're intent on this business plan, which you and I both know that they are, and they're going to have their 2-hour show, and Urban Meyer's going to be there, and Joel, the whole crew, Joel and Gus, and then that game's going to be at noon. You can't just say, all right, and I don't remember the exact weekend it is, the date, but they could be running into the same issues with the World Series, right? It's late October.
Yeah.
So that game has to be at noon, and Penn State's not going to get a whiteout. Well, it's not that scary to go play there at noon. It just isn't.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. People say that about the Horseshoe, that the atmosphere is not the same. Well, Ohio State doesn't generally need the crowd to push it over the top in the big games, but when that opponent comes in, they usually have that support even if the game kicks off when it's still light out.
Yeah.
I don't feel that anybody thinks the same intimidation factor exists at Penn State at noon.
All right. Last couple
and
things.
James Franklin, by the way, is still their coach.
Yeah. Well, they did destroy Memphis State or Memphis. Is it Memphis State now? It's University of Memphis now, right? Yeah. So
that tells you how meaningful that win is.
Yeah, there you go. but I digress. Does Ohio State sign Cam Martinez? What's Bermanology? What's your? I mean, I tell you what, recruiting has changed so much because if this was 5 years ago, we'd be talking about 20 guys right now. The Ohio State's in on. Can they hang on to them, et cetera? And that's been preempted by the early signing day, which basically is now the signing day. This is the post.
Yeah.
This is the late signing day. What's your sense of this is a pretty damn good full class that Ryan Day has put together?
But this is the guy. He's the only one left. He's the only one that Ohio
so everybody's
State
gonna fixate on
and
that.
Everything is, and I think probably justifiably so because as we've talked about, what Ohio State needs to address just in this offseason is secondary and running back. Well, I mean, if they got really crazy, they could put Cam Martinez at running back.
Exactly.
That's how special this guy is. He's not going to play offense for Ohio State. I've peeked into Berm's crystal ball. I think that this was kind of the weekend that there had to be a decision before Friday because he could go take a visit to Notre Dame. Berm, I know, is working on this story. I don't know I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Cam Martinez is going to shut it down and reaffirm his commitment. It'll almost be like a new commitment because he was open to listening to Notre Dame, Minnesota, and Northwestern, and had his doubts. But when you send, Kerry Combs up there for that meeting and Cam, talk to Berm about it.
I know. I thought that was. I mean, Berm talked to him before, during, during,
like
and
he's
after.
Getting a live update.
Yeah, and it was an interesting story just about how the call it the Kerry Combs effect.
And it tells you a lot about what makes him such a successful.
You can read it on LettermenRow.com.
Yeah, there you go. It tells you a lot about what makes him such a successful recruiter. We talked about the Shaun Wade couch jumping, the story when I was down in Jacksonville, but now Kerry Combs is in there in Muskegon at his high school at 10 a.m. Cam had been done with classes and was at his job, but Kerry Combs stayed there for 4, 5, 6 hours getting to know, the counselor, talking to his coach, watching film, talking to anyone in the hallway and trying to get all bases covered. And that's sort of that. I think Urban Meyer described that once when Von Bell's recruitment's like making sure that your tentacles touch
the barber,
touch everything.
Get to know his barber,
know everybody. And Kerry Combs only had really, 1 day to do that. Where if it had been a full process or full year, he could have been back multiple times and developed that relationship. Well, he had to do it in a crash course fashion. So he was there all day, then went to the family house. I think he was there 4 or 5 hours. Like that's you don't really get to do that if you had your normal full signing day, as you say, in February. But all attention is on this guy, and he's the only one you need. He's the only one you're recruiting. Kerry Combs is officially on board. It's his first day on the job, and you just go let him do what he used to be really good at. Yeah. I think that he probably succeeded. Yeah,
interesting. Muskegon, man, I on one of our vacations one time we stayed up on the west coast of Michigan, and Saugatuck was the area, but we went up north of Muskegon, this place called Silver Lake, where back then you could rent basically dune Jeeps.
Yeah.
And I got to drive. I'm telling you, it's top 3, one of the 3 greatest things I've ever done in my life. I don't think you could do that anymore because they probably had some crashes. But I mean, you could, they taught you how to go up the dunes and you just follow these. And it was one of the great. I know I'm digressing here, but when I think Muskegon, that's what I think of. And it was one of the great times. I mean, just going up over these dunes, it's like Rommel. We're chasing Rommel or something. Of course, North Africa or something. But my wife kept saying, "Slow down." I said, "Sweetheart, if I slow down, I'm not going to make the top of the dune, and we're going to be flipping backwards."
You got to go. You're going to slow down anyway.
Yeah, it's funny, man, what triggers memories in your mind. But I know most people don't care about that, but I did. It was one of the great times ever. But, hey, Boston, appreciate it, my man, as usual.
Always a pleasure.
You always offer insight there, and I do believe that Cam Martinez, I get this sense from what he told Berm after the visits, that he feels all is well. And the thing I think that they're impressing on people more than anything else is, before Jeff Hafley, they were putting guys in the league from DBU. I mean, they were getting it done.
The guy who
built Kerry Combs.
The guy who built it is back.
Yeah. So Jeff Hafley he wasn't a flash in the pan. I mean, he was lightning. Let's face it, he was exactly what the defensive secondary needed
you're right.
to get its act back together. And, of course, a couple things fell apart there in that old Fiesta Bowl. But we'll talk about that as these podcasts go on. But
we've got a long offseason.
Yeah. But the bottom line is the guy who really got it going is back in town. And why would that make anyone doubt what's up?
Yeah, I don't think it will. And look, I mean, as I said, we got to spend a little bit of time up there in Muskegon. I've watched Cam Martinez, the highlights, and got to know him personally just, one or two times. But this guy – he missed spring ball. He wasn't ever going to come here for that. But I would not rule him out as somebody who could be on the field a lot as a freshman. He can do everything you want, and I don't want to steal Berm's thunder with how much because he will always and has told the story 1,000 times about seeing him as a freshman and knowing he was special.
Yeah.
This kid does have it. And that it's when the coverage gets blown out on him as the attention heats up for the final stretch run, he's worth it. This kid is a potential program changer.
I always like how people say, well, who'd he play or who's he playing against and stuff. I remember Billy Sims played for Hooks, Texas. Was like a division, a 2A team west of Texarkana. I got to see him play once in high school, and I got to see him play in the high school all-star game in Texas. And you just go, he could be playing for the Green Bay Packers. He'd be that good. I mean, they just jump out at you. And that's the way this kid, man, you watch a video of him, like Kerry Combs said, he almost went,
9 minutes of touchdowns.
9 minutes of touchdowns, and they're looking at him on defense. But I think they're looking at him, if he can contribute, they're looking at him either way.
I talked to his high school coach last summer, and he said when they do tackling drills, when they do stuff on defense, there's no he's one of the best tacklers that he's ever had. This Muskegon program.
He's a football player.
Yeah, for people that don't know that much about Michigan high school football, which I didn't, it's one of the most storied programs in the state, and they're competing for state titles every year. He said he's been there a long time, one of the best form tacklers that he's ever seen, but they couldn't play him on defense. They didn't need him as much as they needed him to play quarterback.
Yeah.
And so they had to save him.
It's high school football.
He didn't want to.
Yeah.
But that's what they needed. And for Ohio State, that need is going to be different. They need him in the secondary. They don't, Brian Hartline might throw a fit and fight for him when he gets here to play in the slot and play, run around, but they know what this kid can do on defense.
Yeah.
And Cam Martinez, had gone back and forth in his mind about what he wanted to play, and he told Berm, he was tired of getting hit because he had to do so much for them on offense at Muskegon and the Big Red up there. Now it's going to be his turn to turn it around.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back to talk about that. I mean, especially after signing day. I mean, the late signing day and other things.
Bonus.
It's always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoyed having Joshua Perry on my podcast again to talk about the impact of Kobe Bryant and then to talk about rules, et cetera, of college football that got kind of muddied as you watch that Fiesta Bowl, and where will things get clarified as this process goes on between the 2019 and 2020 season. I doubt it. Maybe some more edicts coming out of some of these high-level official conferences. But you know what? Until next time, this is Tim May. Thanks for being on with me, Boston. Tim May, the Tim May Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.